Welcome back to the Fourth Man Podcast. You are here with Shug.
And Michael,
Yes, sir.
and we're back. Fourth Man Podcast.
Fourth Man Podcast.
We're back.
We're back and ready to get to it.
Take two.
Take two. First one was not great, but hey, we're back. Sticking with it.
Yeah.
But today, we're going to be talking about young in ministry. So we're both young. I am 26.
I'm 21. 21.
The good old 2-1. And we both serve in our local church. Different areas, same areas. Both serve outside the church in different areas, same areas type thing. But if you want to start, kind of where do you serve inside the church, outside the church, things like that?
Yeah. To start off inside the church, kind of do like an introduction to the service for 9 o'clock and 11 o'clock services. And then about to start this men's group that I'm about to serve in. And then, so we're just going to be bouncing around, serving where need be. And then the Bible study group, we have a Bible study group. And then we might be starting a Bible study group too, so that'll be good. And me and Shug will probably be leading that. And then outside of the church, mainly just work. A lot of times in the gym too. The gym's an easy place for me to start conversation. So met a few people through the gym and invited them to church and stuff like that.
So I also do the introduction into the service. You know, we kind of swap up on that. I work with the youth, serve under your dad in that aspect. Serve as kind of another preacher, I guess.
Yeah.
When our pastor is out, I'll fill in for him sometimes. Like you said, the men's ministry, we're about to kick off with Ryan, who's going to head that up. We'll kind of just serve under him through that. Also do the media ministry, so photography, videography, Facebook Live, stuff like that. Outside the church, let's see. You know, I work in construction, underground construction, so I got a crew of 3 or 4 under me, so I try and minister to them as much as I can. Then the people we work around, different crews, the Bible study, you know, kind of just sit in and listen for the most part. But if we start this new one, that'll be a cool experience, you know, just to lead other young believers, get to know, grow community, things like that. So that'll be cool to start and cool to see how that grows. Yeah. As you know, young people are really just trying to strive to live for the Lord.
Yeah.
You know, that's mainly what we'll be talking about today is how can young people serve the Lord and strive to live a better life with the Lord, you know. So, you know, we talked about where do we serve in the church and outside of the church, but a good question is how do you serve? You know, there's different ways of serving. I guess there is, you know, like the way I serve will be different than you serve, kind of in mentality, structure, just how our personalities differ, you know. So, kind of what's your mindset into serving?
To going into serving, I would say, I mean, we look back and that's what Jesus did for the majority of the part when he was here on earth, is performing miracles, serving others. And I mean, ultimately he serves us in the most extreme way is that he died on the cross for us. So he served us by giving us salvation through him. But that's kind of how I view salvation, but or how I view servitude, like being a servant. But so I would say that's like the fuel, and the fire is I like to help people in general. I've always kind of liked to help people. Like if I can help an old lady or hold the door or go out of my way to do something that benefits somebody else and not me. It makes you feel good, I think, for the most part too. Like you just, I don't know, doing a good deed, and not even out of I want to see how many good deeds I can get done, but to serve, truly serve.
Yeah. So my mindset, going into servanthood or servitude is, a lot like you said, it's biblical. We're commanded to serve. The Great Commission, we can look at that. It's like, hey, go tell people about the gospel. It's like, okay, but to tell people about the gospel, you first have to serve them. It's like if I just straight up say, blah, 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 like go into that, it's like, But if we're serving with a servant heart, then we're going to the people and not a, hey, I'm better than you aspect, because we know we're not. But, hey, I'm humbling myself to my flesh and say, hey, this is more important than how I feel. Because I'm not a big talker to people. Now, if I don't know you, a lot of times I probably won't say a word to you, But if we humble ourselves before the cross, it's like, hey, Jesus served in the most ultimate way by dying on the cross. It's like, I can get over my shyness. I can get over the awkwardness.
Yeah.
Because first off, if we want to be more Christ-like, then we first have to serve. And that also goes into why we serve. It's biblical. Christ served, our ultimate example. Noah built an ark and shared God's message through that. Just think of that. It never rained.
That is, dude, I didn't know that until like the last few years, and that is wild. Like
they didn't know what rain was, but yet
that's crazy.
He humbled himself to what people were going to think of. Dude, Noah's crazy.
Like that guy's nuts.
What is rain? Why is he building this big old thing out of wood? So he served God through building the ark. Joseph saved Israel from starving.
Yeah.
After all of his trials, his brothers threw him into a well, told his dad that animals killed him. Then he got sold into slavery. Then he was accused of rape, and ultimately he was second in command of Egypt, where the brothers ended up coming, and he got to serve his family and serve Israel by his faithfulness.
I was just going to say that. I think that kind of goes hand in hand, like being a servant and being faithful to the Lord at the same time. Like you see it in Joseph, like he was faithful and he served. Like you see Noah, because he was faithful and he trusted in the Lord, that he was going to do this for God's glory. And even though he may have seemed crazy, he was still serving the Lord. And that's a hard way to serve sometimes, is blind faithful, being completely dependent on the Lord and his plan.
Yeah. And that's the ultimate, we can serve out of different areas. We can serve out of different mindsets. But the thing everybody has in common in servanthood or servitude is that the faithfulness of the Lord is our fuel on, hey, I don't know why I'm going to serve this person, but Christ knows.
Yeah.
There is a call on our life just to serve people out of a servant's heart. And especially as young people, it's important to know why you serve. Not only, okay, well, it's biblical, or, I've always seen people do it, but why is it, as a young person, as a young believer, why is it important to serve? You get experience, like before speaking in front of people, terrifying.
It's awful. First-hand experience today.
Especially when you hate speaking in front of people.
Yeah.
So I've kind of, in my life as a Christian, I've kind of started speaking in front of people earlier than you have. So I surrendered when I was 18, started preaching off and on from then. So I don't want to say I'm comfortable in front of people, but
you've done it enough.
I've done it enough, and you're getting into it by speaking in front of people.
Yeah.
So kind of what is your experience of, just saying, hey, it doesn't matter what, I feel like doing. It doesn't matter what people think of me, what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I'm just going to do what the Lord wants me to do.
Yeah, I think that has a big portion of that is knowing, like, okay, if whatever I can do to serve God, if there's if this could impact somebody's life. So I've just now, well, let me restart, I guess, and go over, like, I've just now started to talk in front of people as far as in church, not like preaching or anything, but we'll sing our first song, and then we'll go through, and then usually Shug will do it, but if Shug has to preach or Shug's gone, then I'll fill in and basically bring a verse and kind of what God has showed me through that verse, and just a quick, usually it's like an encouragement or something to do with along those lines. And then on top of that, it can be scary as first service today, I just completely blanked. Like, I was like not prepared at all, I guess. And but yeah, just to serve in that way, just because I know that, okay, if God can use me in whatever way he sees fit, not what I see fit, I would say, no, I'm not doing that. Like, that is stupid. I'm not going up in front of a bunch of people and trying to talk to them. But I would say that it's just the ultimate goal. I'm a very like long-term goal oriented person. So seeing the end goal is, okay, this could grow somebody closer to the Lord. This could have some type of wake up call for somebody, not through me, but God's words through me. So that's kind of my biggest impact as far as.
You've gotten more comfortable at it, though.
A little bit.
Like, from your first one to now, like,
yeah.
you know, it's, even Brother Brian was like, he's getting comfortable up there.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, the more you do it, the more, I don't want to say experience, but the more practice you have, and the more comfortable you feel speaking in front of people.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to mess up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, everybody messes up. But it's the experience of, okay, I messed up here. How can I do better?
Mm-hmm.
Or, hey, I messed up. I kind of blanked out. Okay, how can I recover from it? You know,
couldn't recover this morning.
Yeah,
Could not.
You know, you're still learning. You're still
Yeah.
getting that experience. You're still getting that knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and when you have experience and knowledge and wisdom, that's a trifecta.
Yeah.
You know, and you'll grow in that through, you know, through life. The more you do it, because you'll be able to start in your private study. You can start pulling that into, you know, up in front of the people. That connects the two scriptures together. That brings a point maybe more clear to somebody who might not know. And then through the wisdom of people who've done it before. You know, in my life, I know I got Brian, I got Bob, I got Kevin, I got Daniel. You know, I got some preachers that I submit under just because they have more experience and more knowledge and more wisdom than I. So it's like, hey, this sermon I preached did not feel good about. Like, what some takeaways from it. And that's why it's important to start as a young person, is because, hey, we're going to start learning now instead of when we're 35.
Yeah, and it is cool to see somebody that has done that for a long time. Even just like Brother Brian, I mean, he's only 50, mid-50s, 50, yeah, or early 50s. But just he's been doing it for, 25-plus years. And just to see his, I don't know, his faith and his, just for doing it so long, his servanthood is great. It's cool. And we want to model after those type of people, the elders in the church, the people that we look up to role model-wise and stuff like that, who have been doing it a long time. And those are usually the biggest, like, biggest servants, I guess you could say. I see a lot of, like, older women in the church and the older men cooking and cutting the grass and helping out there, helping in the nursery. So it's always something.
Yeah, and serving is not just getting up and preaching or getting up and singing or getting up and talking. Serving is just submitting yourself to what needs to be done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, so if a toilet's clogged up, are you going to serve and unclog it?
Yeah.
You know, if the grass needs cutting, are you going to sweat and cut it? You know, if the parking lot needs to be swept, or the kitchen needs to be tidied up, or the chairs need to be straightened in the sanctuary, like, would you humble yourself and just do it without the recognition?
Yeah.
You know?
A lot of people look for that.
Yeah, a lot of people a lot of people want the first chair without serving in the second chair.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, you want the praise and you want the acknowledgement. You want people to know that you're doing it. But it's like, would you humble your prideful self and say, hey, it doesn't matter if somebody knows I'm doing it. I'm just going to do it. Because that is how, number one, that's how we grow as a servant. That's how we stay humble is, hey, I was doing this when nobody knew it. So I'm good with nobody knowing.
Yeah.
You know, but serving as a young person, it also builds relationships and builds community with others.
Yeah.
Like a lot of my friends are, I don't want to say double my age, but, you know,
Yeah.
they're up there in age just from my time in church and, you know, hanging out with like the people I see, like with Daniel and Brian and Bob, you know, just submitting to them and saying, hey, I value your experience, I value your knowledge, I value your wisdom, I value your time. And just over that, we've built a relationship to where I can call upon them, be like, hey, I'm struggling with this, or hey, I don't really understand what this scripture is talking about, or hey, this sermon I just preached was horrible, how can I do better? And it's just, it helps build community also. You know, kind of like the Bible study on Tuesday night that, you know, builds the community through that.
Definitely.
You know, and it kind of, you know, through that is we find people our age who's also serving. You know, so it's not only a, hey, we're going to get together and talk about biblical qualities or biblical ideas or topics or just, you know, study straight from God's word. You know, it's also, hey, how are we serving together? Like, how can I help you serve?
Yeah.
And that's the importance of community.
Yeah, and what we can do in that community and draw so many of those people in to go serve others is the main thing. I think that's like some of the most fun time I've had too, just like serving at camp, serving at, I know at campground we used to do this, during the like all the parades and stuff, we'd go out there and cook and hand out free food and a Bible with it and all that stuff. And it was like, so it was just like we were hanging out doing stuff for the Lord, and it was so cool. And it grows those relationships that you normally don't get to see outside of church, because normally, I mean, it's Sunday morning, everybody's, hey, how you doing? And then we sit down, we sing songs, we listen to the preacher preach, and then we leave. And that's kind of the extent of it. So having those outside times where we can serve is really cool, and it grows you as a family.
And through, you know, or through serving with other people, it gives you experiences as a young person in ministry. Like for me, my first sermon I've ever preached, I don't think I made it to the 5-minute mark.
I very vividly remember that one.
Like, it was the shortest message I've ever preached in my life, dude. Like, it felt like it was an hour. Like, it felt like it dragged out. I'm like, dude, I got to be past time. Next thing I know, it's been 5 minutes. But, you know, through that now, you know, I can preach for 40 minutes or 50 minutes or 30 minutes. And it's just cool that the experience from younger to now, like, you can see the growth. And you can see how you react to situations. You know, because at the beginning of my personal walk, I was a yes man. Like, I would say yes to serve anywhere, do anything, children's church, youth, adults, cut the grass. You know, I would just say yes to anything and everything. But as I've grown older, as I've stuck to it, stuck in the word, it's like, okay, I'm not called to do everything. You know? So through that experience, I've learned somewhat how to say no. You know, kind of what's some things you've learned as, you know, young in the ministry, dealing with people, kind of how you see ministry going, things like that.
So what I've learned, what I've seen, I guess, through some of the people that I look up to spiritually, is that they're always serving. Like my dad, Brother Brian, even you, like even though we're around the same age, but guys who I can model my life after, and they're always serving somewhere, even if it's the little things always matter the most, I think, when serving, and holding the door, picking up after yourself, like it's just little things like that, picking up something else that somebody may have left, or helping somebody here, or this person needs to be seen at the hospital, or whatever it may be. I think that's one of the biggest takeaways that I've seen in my life with people who serve.
A big thing I've learned is, man, your past doesn't matter.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, for the longest time, I always thought my past would keep me from doing what the Lord wants me to do. Like, I thought my past was a hindrance, or it would be a stumbling block for somebody, things like that. But the more I've learned, and the more in community and relationships with people, it's like, man, that is your testimony.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, man, look what God did in my life. Like, he brought me from zero to this.
I was just going to say that you talked about that today in your sermon, talking about how that your testimony, we don't give it enough credit almost, that we don't use it to the fullest capability of what we could use it to. Like, look at how terrible I was and what he did, and how he cleaned me and how he washed me, to, not saying that we're perfect now, but to somebody who's trying to live the right way.
And I think we put a lot of emphasis, too, on the bad to good testimonies,
Mm-hmm.
quote unquote, It's like, man, if you were just living your life and you just saw, hey, I need the Lord,
Mm-hmm.
That has the same amount of weight as somebody who was a drug addict for 50 years and then came to Christ.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, our testimonies are the same.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's different experiences through the testimonies, but your testimony and my testimony and every Christian's testimony is I was dead in my sins.
Mm-hmm.
I was a sinner. I was not good. I needed Christ. I saw that I needed Christ. And man, Christ is Lord of my life. What he did on the cross was for me, and I accept it, and I'm making him Lord of my life. Like, that is a testimony of every believer.
Yeah.
But that holds so much power to people who aren't Christian, because it's like, hey, I can relate to them. Like, they're not just speaking,
they're not Mr. Goody Two-Shoes.
They're not goody two-shoes, or they're not just speaking straight from the Bible, quoting scripture. It's like, hey, they're making it relatable, and I can relate to that.
Yeah.
So the past doesn't matter. It's like, I use this as an excuse for a lot. Mm-hmm. And I still find myself using it as an excuse. But also as a young person, like, I try to use my experience as a crutch also. It's like, sometimes I'll mess up or this or that, and it's like, oh, well, I'm still young, so it'll happen over time. And it will, but it's like, when I use it as an excuse, I'm not going to put in the work to do better.
Yeah.
But when I realize it's like, hey, it's going to get better, let me just stick in the word. It's like, okay, now the Lord is pruning me. Now the Lord is saying, hey, I'm going to give you some wisdom. Hey, I'm going to give you some knowledge. And just through that experience as a young person, is you learn from your failures to bring God more glory in the future, But, yeah, the past doesn't matter, man. But how to grow as a young minister or as a young person, how would you say to grow as a young person?
Already grow as a young person. I mean, there's a quote, and it's like, never be the smartest in the room. And if you're the smartest in the room, you need to get out of that room. And it is true, just because you need to surround yourself with wise and knowledgeable people, and people who have done your walk and stuff. And also, I think culture changes too. So having that balance of somebody who's wise and somebody who's done that walk and been through what you could be going through, and then also, on the other hand, having the young believers to continue to be with you and walk with you daily as you fight off maybe different type of temptation. Like, I know social media is a big thing now. Like, you can get so wrapped up into comparison or lust or whatever it may be just on social media, and that's it alone. And like, to where somebody like that I model my life after, like Brother Brian or something, like, he wasn't growing up in that time period of social media, so it's hard for him to relate. But I can use his wisdom and knowledge, and also the Bible. I mean, the Bible's going to talk about it, and the Bible never changes. It culture changes, but the Bible never. It always stays the same, and you can always apply it. So I think that would be my biggest impact, is surround yourself with wise and older people who have done the walk, and then younger people who can encourage you and who can walk with you daily, and turn to the Bible and what it has to say about what your current situation is.
I would say, a big thing on how to grow as a young person in the ministry, or as servanthood or servitude, or just serving in general, would be, okay, so we know the Bible is our ultimate authority. We take that, we see that, and we acknowledge that, and we believe that, but also submit under somebody. Like, don't just go out on your own with nobody to help you through or help you succeed, but submit under somebody who served before. So, like, for me, I submit under Brother Brian. Like, he served for many faithful years, in the same type of ministry that I feel the Lord's called me in. So I'm going to submit to him and say, okay, look at him, see how he serves, ask some questions, serve alongside him. But yeah, man, I just say submit under somebody. Submit under somebody who is serving the Lord with the right heart, And then the next thing would just be, man, find a place to serve.
Yeah.
You can't grow as a servant if you're not serving.
Yeah, and serving with those people too, like, that grows your relationship even stronger.
Yeah, there's so many things that intertwine or intertwangle. I think that's a word. Like, so if I'm submitting under Brian and we're doing ministry together, we're growing in relationship. He's giving me his wisdom, his knowledge, his experience. We're growing in a community together. I'm learning things. So, I mean, it's all intertwined as we serve. And we ultimately push the church forward when we serve. If we're a church that just meets on Sunday and just preaches for 30 minutes and don't do anything throughout the week, then we're not being the church that Christ has created.
Yeah, called us to be.
Like, the church is meant to serve people. We come to a church building to get refreshed, get replenished, get a word from God, and then we bring that into the streets.
Yeah.
So servanthood is not just Sunday morning, Wednesday night type thing. It's Monday through Sunday. When we're alive, we're serving people.
Yeah.
And that's how we glorify Christ.
And I know one of the shirts that Harvest made, it was love God, love people, but also, like, serve God, serve people. You can use that to. I just not thought about that.
Yeah. So we serve God by serving others, and that's what we're created to do. People see that first. There's a saying, spread the gospel by how you live your life, which is true.
Yeah.
Like, we should live out the gospel in our lives, but we should also speak about the gospel. I think a lot of people use that as a crutch, is, hey, I'm just living out the gospel,
This is how I serve.
People will see me.
Yeah.
People will see the gospel through me. Good, but if somebody doesn't even know the gospel, they're just going to think, well, that's a good person.
Good person. Yeah, good guy.
But to spread the message of the gospel, we have to use our mouth. We have to use the words.
We have to actually talk about it. We can't just imply it.
It's like, if I'm washing your feet on the street, it's like, okay, this guy's weird for touching people's feet.
That dude's just a weirdo.
But if I say, hey, I am humbling myself before you to show you the love of Christ through this action, then it's like, oh, there's a bigger message. So it goes hand in hand of servanthood and speaking of the gospel. And I think as a young minister, as a young person in ministry or doing ministry or serving, is you need to live out the gospel and speak about the gospel. You know, do both.
Yeah.
It's a both and, not an either or.
Mm-hmm.
You know. So I think that's about all we got for the day.
That's it.
I think that's it. So thank you for listening to the Fourth Man Podcast. It's been an honor. It's been cool.
Still working on that outro.
Still working on the outro. We'll get it here soon.
Fourth Man Podcast.
Fourth Man Podcast. But
Weezy out of here.
yeah, we'll see you Monday. Deuces. Have a good day.
Deuces.
Deuces.